Hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is Ajay Zadha. I'm a blockchain instructor here at Edureka. I'm also a co-founder and principal architect at Ironworks. It's a Pune-based startup focused on blockchain solutions. I hope my voice is audible to everyone and you can see my screen that I'm sharing. You can confirm and you can ask questions using the questions panel. If you have any questions during the webinar session, you can post the questions using questions panel and I'll take those questions at the end. Okay, so let's start. So today we are going to talk about what is blockchain, and whenever we are talking about blockchain, not a single discussion of blockchain. It always starts with Bitcoin, right? So it is all the discussion goes around Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency, and then we understand the technology underlying or underpinning Bitcoin. So we are going to understand what is blockchain, what is Bitcoin, what are the features of blockchain, different features that it is offering. We'll also talk about what are the different use cases where exactly blockchain is going to be useful in different industry scenarios. Okay, so let's first talk about what is blockchain and Bitcoin. We all know, the blockchain technology is the latest buzz in the industry. Okay, so and this we know because of Bitcoin, right? So Bitcoin was the first implementation. We call it as Bitcoin is the first killer application of blockchain. Bitcoin came into existence somewhere around October 2008 when the inventor of Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto, released a paper which described the digital currency. And since then, it has been evolved a lot. So there is an open source community around Bitcoin, which is continuously evolving this digital currency. Blockchain as a technology, which is an underpinning technology of Bitcoin cryptocurrency, the blockchain is also continuously growing. If you talk about blockchain itself, the database which is underpinning Bitcoin technology, it's basically a continuous growing list of records called blocks, and these blocks are linked to each other. More specifically, if you talk about it, is the current block is linked to the previous block, and this linking, this chaining creates a database which is a blockchain database. This linking is done using a very secured state-of-the-art cryptography. So if we want to visualize blockchain, which is something like this, there is a new block created. So if you talk about Bitcoin as a currency, so when you talk about currency, there are transactions that one person is able to send some value or some money from his wallet to the recipient's wallet. So these transactions are basically going into a database called blockchain database. So in the Bitcoin network, these transactions are verified by someone called as miners, and miners are collecting these new transactions into something called a block. And those transactions and the block itself is validated and attached to an existing chain. So more specifically, the new block which is getting created is linked to its previous block using the previous block's identifier. That's how it turns out to be a blockchain. The chain grows day by day whenever there are new transactions coming in, and they are included in the block and the new blocks are created. So let's understand what are the features that blockchain is giving to us. What's so unique about blockchain? The most important thing, we can say the pillars of blockchain are the encryption. Encryption is not a new technology per se. We have been using hash-based encryptions, different cryptographic algorithms from years in the computer science history. The pieces of these technologies exist in the space, but blockchain makes use of encryption heavily in all the transactions, in all the operations. Second pillar, which is a building block of blockchain, is basically the distributed public ledger. So what is distributed public ledger? If you talk about ledgers in accounting, our day-to-day accounting, the traditional transactions that we do in our day-to-day business, we use accounting softwares like Tally, Xbox. So these are the different accounting softwares we use, and each of these accounting software has its own ledger. So for every entity, for every organization, there is ledger maintained. But all these ledgers are maintained in an isolated manner. So every organization owns its own ledger. Like it has its own ledger, and it's not shared necessarily with other organizations. So it's siloed storage. Second thing is it's not distributed per se. It's not a public ledger. It's a private ledger. Okay. If we talk about Bitcoin blockchain maintains a public ledger in the sense any transaction that I'm making, let's say Ajay is sending some of the Bitcoin to Vijay, let's say is a recipient. So when I am sending fund from my wallet to Vijay's wallet, this transaction gets recorded in a public ledger. And this ledger is distributed among the entire Bitcoin network. This network is public network. It's not just maintained by one single organization or one single country. It's maintained by the group of miners who have the database of entire Bitcoin transactions so far happened right from the launch of the Bitcoin since 2009. And every ledger, every transaction block and the ledger database is distributed among all these network nodes across the globe. So that's how Bitcoin maintains the ledger in a public manner. So this is unique thing about Bitcoin blockchain. There's one more, important aspect of Bitcoin blockchain, which is called as a validation mechanism, a consensus mechanism, and which is known as proof of work. Bitcoin makes use of an algorithm or called proof of work, where when a transaction is made, when a transaction is propagated in the network, there is someone who is validating your transaction, whether the transaction is correct, whether the sender has sufficient balance in his or her wallet or not. So all those, there are around 30-40 transaction checklists which are already embedded in the Bitcoin software. And this process of validating each transaction is done by these miners by running those algorithms on their hardware. So this process is also called as mining, where they validate the transactions and they also include these transactions into new blocks. They also create a new block and publish the block to other miners in the network. So proving that the particular miner has already spent the CPU and it has worked on finding a particular answer to the block puzzle. So I'm not going to get into the more technical details of proof of work, but it's a validation process of each transaction and blocks. And using this process, the multiple miners in the Bitcoin network, they come to a consensus about the finality of a transaction. So why do we need this kind of proof of work consensus? Because in Bitcoin blockchain, it's a peer-to-peer transaction from one person to another. There is no intermediary involved in these two people. Okay, it's a peer-to-peer transaction. In case of traditional transactions, when we do transactions through banks or any financial institutions, there is always a middleman or a trusted third party involved. If you take the same example of, let's say, Ajay is transferring some fiat currency to, let's say, Amazon. So to do this transaction, I have in a traditional way, I make use of my banking software. So bank is an intermediary, who is settling the accounts, the ledgers of both these parties. In case of Bitcoin blockchain, so this settlement, the transaction settlement is done automatically, and there is a process. These miners are basically validating these transactions and including your transaction into the new block. So this process and coming to an agreement about what is the transaction right or not. So that process is called as proof of work. Okay, so very expensive hardware is used, and a lot of hashing algorithms, are very powerful CPUs are run to come to a conclusion about whether the block is correct or not. Okay, and in order to run this network, um, as we said, there are a group of miners who are validating these transactions. What is the incentive for them to do that? Why they are doing it? There is a specific incentive, and when they create a new successful block, uh, they get an incentive in terms of Bitcoin itself. For example, if I am a miner and I am validating a transaction and creating a new block, if my block is successful and if it is accepted by other miners in the network, I will get some amount of new Bitcoins into my wallets. So that's an incentive for contributing into the consensus process, into the validation process. So So as far as my opinion is concerned, I think this incentive mechanism, which is a distributed consensus mechanism. So this is very unique concept that our industry has never seen ever in the history of computer science. That I do not even know who the miner is, and the system also doesn't even know who the miner is. But as long as the miner is following the checklist which is set into the Bitcoin software, he or she will get incentivized for being fair, being part of the consensus. So these are the four building blocks of Bitcoin blockchain: hash encryption, distributed public ledger, proof of work consensus mechanism, and the incentivization to the miners for validating the transaction and the block. So that was about Bitcoin and the blockchain, underpinning blockchain technology. Let's also understand where this technology can be used. When Bitcoin started in year 2009, almost a couple of few years, it was all focused on the payment aspect. Since there is no intermediary, it was used as a payment vehicle for peer-to-peer payments, even across borders. Like I can make payments from one country to another without having any intermediary. So it's a wallet to wallet, peer to peer payment. But since the community has been evolving a lot, and people have started talking about the same blockchain technology to be used in areas other than payments, like supply chain, healthcare, government. So there are plenty of use cases other than payment, other than currency, where blockchain technology can also be used. So let's look at few of them. This is not an exhaustive list, but the prominent use cases that we think blockchain can disrupt these industries. If we talk about financial services organizations, problems in the financial services. So in financial services, we can see that in September 2016, Barclays has already carried out the world's first trade transaction using blockchain. Okay, it could be a transaction between two different banks, using the same blockchain platform. Nasdaq has decided to also use blockchain for trading. Okay, they will soon be running a proof of concept. They're also trying to use blockchain for voting. So these are few of the use cases in financial industry. Of course, there are more like AML and KYC related use cases. There are some loan related use cases as well, which are being discussed in the financial services space. If we talk about government and voting, so voting is very popular use case in blockchain. Estonia is a very small Baltic nation, is the first to implement blockchain-based e-voting system, where the voting tokens can be assigned on blockchain to all the citizens of the country. And whenever there is a ballot, they want to cast the vote, they can cast the vote using their wallet itself, where the voting token will be consumed and the transaction is recorded on the blockchain. It's very transparent. There is no possibility of forging the votes, bogus votes. So since everything is recorded on the blockchain publicly, also allowing maintaining the privacy of the voter. So that's one example where the government itself is planning to use blockchain in a voting system. There's one more solution called Follow My Vote. It's world's first open source online voting solution based on blockchain, where the people like us openly can use the system for conducting votes for different reasons. It could be votes in your organization, votes in the societies, votes in schools and colleges. So anything like so it's an open solution that can be used for voting based on blockchain. If we talk about real estate, so in real estate, there are a lot of paperwork. So using blockchain, it solves the issues of huge paperwork, and there are a lot of intermediaries, agents involved to process the real estate related transactions, right? So there is a solution built using a solution called Ubiquity, and anyone can manage, track, and transfer land titles and property deeds using blockchain. So once we track the land itself on the blockchain, and if we change the ownership of the land from one person to another, the ownership is recorded publicly on the blockchain. So everyone knows the history of the title changes. So it's a very nice use case which can also be used in government land tracking, land registries. Another use case which is very popular and few of the solutions are already built, and that is in the music streaming area. We know there are a lot of issues in the music industry right now, not just in Bollywood but across the globe, where there are creators who create music. There is a singer, there is a musician, there is a whole group of people who are involved in creating the music. But then once the music is created, there is a very big supply chain which takes this music until the in the hands of the consumer. And when the consumer pays, and then there are royalties which are distributed by the channel, the distributor, the IP owner, and now finally the creators only gets in peanuts. So the system itself of distribution, the royalties is not transparent. Okay, so people are now trying to build a solution to this problem, and Mycelia is a blockchain based platform for artists, for creators who can sell their work directly to the end customers. And the digital representation of the, like, whether it is MP3 or video or digital art, it can be put on a blockchain, and if there is any tampering, the tampering will be easily evident. One can prove the ownership of that particular MP3 or video as well. In this solution, what is being done is there is a concept of smart contract. It's basically based on, we normally have contracts between entities, two individuals or entities. Those are business contracts, and there are certain terms in the contract. So these terms can be put on a blockchain in a program called smart contracts. So similarly, in the music industry space, the royalty distribution can be put onto a smart contract. And when the end customer, consumer, is buying a music online, let's say on YouTube or Spotify, and if the end customer is paying there itself, the amount which is received against that sale will be distributed automatically to all the stakeholders, the IP holders, the creators of the music, the publisher, the channels. And the distribution of the royalty is instantaneous. It is transparent. So it's transparent to everyone. So that's unique and revolutionary solution that blockchain is giving to the music industry. Another very popular use case which is being discussed is in the space of supply chain management. In supply chain, we see there are a lot of middlemen which take time, which consume time, which add cost, and when they are manual, they make a lot of mistakes as well, right? So consider someone is exporting food from India to let's say Philippines, right, or maybe in the Europe. So there are importers, there are exporters, there are freight forwarders, there are customs organizations involved. So there's a government entity involved. There are a lot of different people or entities involved in the process of delivering one product to the consumer. Okay, and every organization has its own system, diverse systems, and they're not necessarily always connected and reflecting the current state of the product, where exactly the product is. So blockchain is if you introduce blockchain here, we can have all these entities put on a blockchain. They can participate in something called as consortium blockchain, and they can share the transaction details. Let's say, for example, there is a movement of product from one place to another. The moment this movement transaction is done successfully, the movement details can be pushed on a blockchain, and the blockchain node can replicate the transaction details to all other nodes instantaneously. That will bring a lot of visibility to all the stakeholders in the process instantaneously. So provenance is a solution which facilitates a transparent and traceable trade on the blockchain. We can Google provenance as a solution which is built on blockchain. So if you talk about building solutions, there are several platforms available in blockchain. One of them is Ethereum platform, which is a public blockchain platform, just like Bitcoin. And it also gives you an ability to write smart contracts using a language called Solidity. Ethereum is not just the only platform available. There are a couple of other platforms available. For example, Hyperledger Fabric, which is a project which is built under the umbrella of Linux Foundation. And there are several other frameworks which are being built under the Hyperledger umbrella. So Ethereum is a public blockchain platform. At the same time, there is an enterprise alliance of Ethereum, which is focusing on enterprise use cases using Ethereum. And there are several top 100 plus organizations who are contributing to the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance as well. If you talk about the technology stack in Ethereum space, these are the platforms available. Like Ethereum itself provides a virtual machine, and there is an IDE called Remix, which you can use to write your smart contract code, and you can test it locally using test RPC. And once you're okay with once you're good with your smart contracts, you can deploy it to the public blockchain. Let's talk a bit about Bitcoin and its history. Talking about Bitcoin, it's first cryptocurrency which was launched in the year 2009 by a person who is not really traceable, called Satoshi Nakamoto. We don't know whether he's one person or a group of people. So he released a paper in 2008, and he also released a software in an open source manner in 2009. And since then, the Bitcoin network is active. Bitcoin makes use of cryptography and mathematical algorithms to run its operations of transaction validation, block creation, verifications, and replicating the transactions and blocks to the entire network. So cryptography is heavily used there. There is a limit which is set in the software for Bitcoin generation, and Bitcoin is not generated in an unlimited fashion. There is a scarcity set in the software, and only 21 million Bitcoins will ever be created. That's how the Bitcoin software is designed. And with every new block which gets created by miners, there are some new Bitcoins generated, and those Bitcoins are given to the miners as an incentive of mining. The Bitcoins are held in a electronic distributed ledger, which is public ledger. Okay, so why do we use Bitcoin? There are a couple of important things that we need to understand why we use Bitcoin, because it's fast. Transactions are instantaneous if there are zero confirmations on a transaction, and or they can take around 10 minutes on an average if the merchant requires a confirmation. For example, you're going to a retail shop and you're buying something and making a transaction. You're paying using Bitcoin, okay, to the merchant. There are few merchants who accept Bitcoin for retail transactions as well. So since there is no middleman who is confirming the transaction finality, there is a process of mining which takes around 10 minutes. So if your merchant is insisting for at least 6 confirmations, then it takes around 10 minutes to confirm a transaction. Otherwise, it's an instantaneous payment from one person to another. It is cheap as compared to the traditional transactions. If you compare remittance from one country to another, so if you compare that, Bitcoin transaction fees are very minimal, or in some cases they are free. But nowadays you don't find free Bitcoin transactions. But they are not comparative to, they're relatively small because they are not in percentages. For example, if I'm sending one Bitcoin and if I'm sending 10,000 Bitcoins, it doesn't really matter how many Bitcoins I'm sending. The transaction fees is based on the transaction size, not based on the amount. Bitcoin is decentralized in the sense there is no single organization who is controlling the operations of Bitcoin. So just like the cross-border payments or remittances for foreign exchanges, we have a SWIFT network, right, which is a centralized network. Or if you talk about any central banking operations, they are either controlled by a bank or a central bank of the nation. If you talk about Bitcoin, it's completely decentralized. So nobody owns it. Every single participant of the Bitcoin network owns that particular node. So that way, there is no central authority who has full control over the network. Okay, so there are no chargebacks. Once the Bitcoin have been sent from one wallet to another, they are gone. Okay, because there is no trusted third party. You cannot reverse that transaction. So every transaction is recorded finally on the blockchain database. A person who has sent the Bitcoins cannot try to retrieve them without the recipient's consent. Okay, so that's again an important aspect. Payment security: transactions don't require you to give up any secret information. You don't need to reveal your identity. So all the Bitcoin addresses, though the database, the ledger is public, your addresses are pseudonymous. You don't need to reveal your true identity to the recipient. They use two keys every transaction. It makes use of public key infrastructure. So the public key and a private key, these keys are used in a Bitcoin transaction in the Bitcoin wallet. So I reveal my Bitcoin address, which is based on the public key, and that becomes my unique identifier. It is as good as my bank account. Okay. So and using the Bitcoin address, I can receive funds in my wallet. Or if I want to send someone some Bitcoins from my wallet, I need his or her Bitcoin address, and using the recipient address, I can send Bitcoin as well. The private key, which is a corresponding key, which is always kept securely in my wallet. So as long as I have a private key with me, I own the Bitcoin. Okay. So it's very important to securely store the private keys, because it's basically proves the ownership of the Bitcoin. So if I lose the private key, I lose access to my Bitcoins. It is not inflationary currency. So as we have seen earlier that only 21 million Bitcoins will ever be created under the original specification of Bitcoin software. Okay, so inflation won't be a problem. Okay, there will always be a scarcity after the 21 million Bitcoins are already in circulation. Okay, it's like gold. Okay, it's not unlimited. It is private. It's like having a clear plastic wallet with no visible owner. Everyone can look inside it, but no one knows who it is. For example, the ledger is publicly available to everyone. On the ledger, if you go and see that, you can see the transaction that, okay, so and so Bitcoin have been transferred from this address to this new address, but you don't know who is behind those addresses. Okay, so that way it is private. You can create your own money. You can certainly buy Bitcoins on the open market, but you can also mine your own if you have enough computing power. So you can participate in the Bitcoin network as a miner as well. And only thing is, you need to have very powerful hardware, CPUs, very specially designed mining equipments, which can generate multiple hashes, almost trillions of hashes per second. And using these kind of special hardware, you can also mine blocks and get incentivized in the form of Bitcoins. So these are the reasons people use Bitcoin. Few more things to understand about Bitcoin is there is no third-party seizure, since there are multiple redundant copies of a transactions database. So no one can seize Bitcoin. Okay, we hear about Bitcoin news that, okay, some country has banned Bitcoin, something like that. Okay, we keep on hearing this kind of news, right? So there is okay, that could be a temporary halt on certain exchanges, but no one can stop Bitcoin. It's not controlled by one single organization or one single geography. Okay, so if certain nodes of Bitcoin goes down, or someone decides to shut it down, it doesn't really impact the other nodes in the network. Okay, so there is no third party seizure. So the most what someone can do is force the user by other means to send the Bitcoins to someone else. No tracking. Unless user publicizes his or her own wallet addresses publicly, no one can really trace transactions back to them. Okay, so no one other than the wallet owners will know how many Bitcoins they have, even if the wallet address was publicized. Okay, the new wallet address can be easily generated. For example, I have a mobile wallet, and in that wallet I have one Bitcoin address, and I have, let's say, publicly shared that address to everyone on Twitter, my Twitter handle. So anyone who are connected to my Twitter or Facebook will know that, okay, on this address Ajay has so and so Bitcoin balance. Okay, but they can only check my Bitcoin balance on that particular address. In my wallet, next day I can create new addresses. I can keep on creating multiple addresses, and if I'm not sharing those addresses, claiming that this is my address, others will not know the true balance of my Bitcoins. Bitcoins cannot be stolen. Okay, Bitcoin's ownership address can only be changed by the owner. No one can steal Bitcoins unless they have a physical access to user's computer, or physical access to the user's private key, and they can send Bitcoins to their account. If they have access to the private, they can send Bitcoins from my account to their own account. So keeping the private key secure is the most important thing in, I think, most of the cryptocurrencies, not just Bitcoin. Okay, so where and how do I buy Bitcoins? So let's see how we can buy Bitcoin. Okay, to start with, the user must install a virtual wallet onto his PC or a mobile device, and this wallet keeps track of your Bitcoin balance and all the transactions that you're making on Bitcoin network. Second, you can buy Bitcoin online, either by a payment company, or you can register on a Bitcoin exchange. There are plenty of exchanges available, and then you can register there and transfer funds to the company. Once the funds are available to the company, the buyer can place an order for a Bitcoin, similar to just like we trade stocks or we buy online. Okay, so Bitcoins can also be purchased from third parties, which sends the coins directly into your virtual wallet. So you can also do a face-to-face transaction using something called as local Bitcoins if you're not willing to buy online. There are a few popular Bitcoin wallets available, so let's look at them. Okay, there are several wallet types which are available. The first one is web wallet, which are basically the wallets created on the website. So normally the online exchanges, they create wallets on their website, and they allow storage of Bitcoin there itself. So few of the examples are Blockchain Info, Green Address, Coinbase Vault Storage. But the key thing that we need to remember in case of web wallet is the private keys are also stored on their web server. Okay, the private keys are not given to the end user. There are other types like mobile wallet, which is a smartphone-based wallet, which makes it really easy to scan QR codes. Like it's portable, it's convenient. If I'm going to make payments to, let's say, a retailer, I can use my mobile phone wallet. I can quickly scan his or his address, and I can make quick payments. So there are examples of mobile wallets: Red Wallet, Mycelium, Airbeats, Greenbeats, Copay. These are the examples of mobile-based wallets. And similarly, you have desktop-based wallets as well, which where you have apps to be installed on a desktop computer or a laptop. So Electrum can be used as a desktop wallet. There's Multibit, Armory. So these are not as convenient as mobile wallets, but if you want to have more security, or convenience is not a preference for you, you can use desktop wallets as well. So hardware wallet is basically a piece of hardware used to store your private keys to your Bitcoins or any currency. There are examples like Ledger Nano or Trezor. These are basically using your USB drive. They're like pen drives. Hardware wallets are like pen drives, but they have an ability to store your private keys on the device, USB device itself. One more type is a very secure type. It's called paper wallets. It's the most secure cold storage solution where you can literally print your private key on the paper. Private key and public key, it's a key pair, and you can keep that paper securely locked in a storage at your home or in a bank. So that's the most secure way of storing Bitcoin wallets. So paper wallet is the most secure one. There are multi-signature wallets where you can create a wallet between two or three people, and when you want to spend money or spend Bitcoins, you can decide how many signatures you want. For example, you can create a combined wallet with your spouse, with your friends. Within a company, you can design a wallet like a CEO, an accountant, finance department, and let's say a purchase department. So these three people can combinedly create a new multi-signature wallet, and then they can decide that, okay, at least two signatures out of three are required in order to spend the Bitcoin. So few examples are like Carbon Wallet, Coinbase, Blocktrail, Electrum, CoinKite. So these are the wallets which are supporting multi-signature wallets. They're also called as shared wallets. Okay, so let's look at some of the example how a transaction can be tracked on Bitcoin. So I'm going to share you an example of a online public blockchain. This is a website called blockchain.info, where you can see what are the latest blocks which are being mined. So this is a live blockchain of Bitcoin, and you can see the latest block is 504644, which was mined 32 minutes back. It has 584 transactions, and so many bitcoins were transacted in that particular block. This block was mined by a mining pool called btc.com, and there's a size and weight of the block. So I can open a certain block by clicking on the block number, and I can see all the block details. So how many transactions are included in this block? There are 584. Every block has its identifier called hash. So this is a block identifier, unique identifier of a block, and it is represented using a cryptographic hash. The current block is linked to a previous block. That's how it creates a blockchain. And you can see the previous block identifier in the hash representation. And this current block is also connected to the next block. So that's how it is creating a chain. And you can see the next block number as well. All right. So if I scroll down, I can see the list of transactions. There is always a first transaction in every block, which is called as coin-based transaction. And this coin-based transaction is responsible to transfer the incentives to the miner. The miner who creates a new block using coin-based transaction, he will receive new bitcoins in his wallet. Other transactions are transactions of the Bitcoin users. Like from this address, you can see so many bitcoins, like in points 202181818212 BTC were transferred to this address. Okay, so likewise you can track every transaction online on a public ledger. Okay, there are types of transactions that you can combine funds from multiple transactions, and you can send it to one particular address, or you can send funds from one address to multiple addresses as well. It is called as distributing transaction. So this could be used when one mining pool is sharing the incentives with multiple miners, or it could be used for distributing employee salaries in those scenarios. Okay, so this way you can track your transaction online. The block reward to the miner, you can see here what is the block reward. So for a successful block creation, which has been created by this block pool, this mining pool called btc.com, there is a 12.5 btc block reward which is given to the miners. I hope this is making sense. Let's go back. Okay, so here we are coming to an end of the session, and let's understand why do we register with Edureka for Bitcoin and blockchain course. The sessions are live, interactive online sessions. They are instructed late sessions. The use cases which are being covered are industry live use cases discussed during the session. We have 24/7 support, Edureka support people available to support you during your exercises. You also get LMS access to your presentation, exercises, notes. So those are available to you lifetime in the LMS. And the certificate that we get at the end is an industry recognized certificate. Okay, so we are open for questions now, and let me see if there are any questions coming in. Okay, there's a very good question from Keshav. What if someone holds significant percentage of 21 million bitcoins and they not use or misuse it? Will you be able to control the market or cause inflation? It's not possible for someone to hold the entire supply of blockchain, okay, because the supply is distributed. Okay, so even if the miners are mining the block, mining new block in the blockchain network, the Bitcoin network, every time it is not possible to have the same miner creating the same block. So all the bitcoins will not be held by one single person. I hope I answered your question, Keshav. Another question from Mr. Saurabh Jain. Does an implementation of blockchain always need to have miners for validating a transaction and for mining the block in the blockchain? Why will someone put his resources on a use case for a voting blockchain? How does he get incentive? Who decides the incentives? Okay, the first question is, it's not necessary that any use case should go on a public blockchain. There are blockchain types. There is a public blockchain which is Bitcoin, Ethereum, and there are a few more where your transaction details and ledgers are available publicly. So if you have a use case which is a B2C use case, kind of Airbnb or Uber or Ola, those kind of use cases are built on public blockchain. But for enterprise use cases, you don't necessarily necessarily go with public blockchains. You go with private blockchain or consortium blockchain platforms. For example, you can make use of Hyperledger Fabric or Corda or Chain.com. So there are plenty of other enterprise blockchain platforms also available, which will help you build your solutions for enterprise scenarios. Okay, so in those cases, you do not share your data publicly on a public blockchain, but you share your data or transactions only with the consortium members. So we talked about the supply chain use case where there are 6 to 7 different consortium participants involved. So in a supply chain scenario, you only share data with those participants. So in case of consortium implementation of blockchain, there is no mining process. Mining is only applicable for currency oriented blockchains like Bitcoin or Ethereum or Dash, Monero. Those are currency oriented blockchains where mining is used because the middleman is not trusted. So the miners are unknown. So in that case, only the mining is used. I hope I answered your question, Saurabh. Okay, there are a lot of questions, but I'll be picking a few of them to answer. And rest of the questions can be answered by Edureka support eventually. Okay, does the Bitcoin blockchain grow too big to store on a node? That's a question from Swanand. That's a nice question. Yes, the Bitcoin blockchain is growing day by day, and you need to have a bigger storage. One more question: how do we convert Bitcoins to other physical currencies? You mean fiat currencies? So that's a question from Sudarshan. So the current way to buy and sell Bitcoin is through the Bitcoin exchanges. If you talk about India, there are plenty of at least 5 to 10 different exchanges available in India where you can pay using your fiat INR and you can buy Bitcoins or vice versa. You can sell Bitcoins and get Indian rupees in your bank account. Okay, so one more question from Gaurav. From where miners are getting paid since transaction is free? Miners are getting paid in 2 ways. One is by successfully creating a new block. Every new block creation will give new Bitcoins to the miners wallet. And the second way the miners get paid is the transaction fees. So when I'm sending Bitcoin from one wallet to another, I'm also charged with transaction fees. So the transaction fees goes to the miners. Once all the Bitcoins have been issued, then what will the miners get? That's a question from Gaurav. Of course, when all the Bitcoins are generated, the transactions, the miners will only get transaction fees, which will be more than what they're charging now. Okay, another interesting question from Jay. What if the Bitcoin holder met an accident? Does it require nominee too, who needs to know the private key? Okay, so there's no process of declaring a nominee to a bank because there's no trusted third party. So what you can do is to have a copy of your private key securely. You can take a printout of your private key and create a paper wallet and keep the copy of the paper wallet with your nominee. So that way you can transfer the ownership. Interesting question from Divesh. Will Bitcoin be regularized? Have some control of government in near future? Bitcoin network cannot be controlled per se by governments, but yes, the trading activities, the exchange activities can definitely be regularized as per the local government laws. Like KYC, AML related laws can be enforced in the near future. A question from Paramjit Kaur. Would you please email us the recorded session to the registered email IDs? Yes, I think Edureka support can take care of sending you the details of the recorded session. Okay, a question from Swanand. If I install Mist, if it reads the entire Bitcoin blockchain, will the blockchain not be too big to read on a laptop? By the way, Mist is not a Bitcoin client. It's an Ethereum wallet, and it doesn't download your blockchain database on your laptop. Okay, if you want to download, yes, you can download using Mist, but yes, it would be a too big data on your laptop. So if you just want to use it for transaction, you can use MetaMask instead of Mist. Okay, another interesting question from Rohit. I would like to know your views on the difference between Bitcoin and Ripple. Okay, the main difference between Bitcoin and Ripple is the control. Ripple is controlled by, though it's running on a blockchain platform to transfer value from one country to another using bank network, it is controlled by one single organization called Ripple. But Bitcoin is not controlled by an organization. Ripple is basically a private or permission blockchain. So you need to have a permission to be to participate in the Ripple network. That's a core difference. How is the price of the Bitcoin being decided? Who is deciding the fluctuation of price? It's basically the sentiments in the market, the demand and supply, and different governments trying to control exchanges, trading. So that affects the sentiments of the traders, and that also affects the fluctuates the price of Bitcoin. Okay, interesting question. Good question from Sumangali. Can you please speak a little bit more about the course? What will be covered? Pre-requirements? Do you need to know coding? Yes, thanks for asking this question. So, little bit about the course. This course covers fundamentals of Bitcoin. It goes into more details of blockchain technology, how the blockchain network works. It talks about the block structure, then the transaction structures in the first couple of modules. Then we move to Bitcoin mining. We talk about Ethereum as a platform. We understand how Bitcoin and Ethereum are different, how Ethereum is unique. We also start building smart contracts using Solidity language, and there's lots of hands-on practice that we do during the Ethereum models. So in Ethereum, we can cover public blockchains, public dApps, as well as we also see installation of Ethereum as a private blockchain on a cloud platform. So that's about Ethereum, and after that we move on to another blockchain platform called Hyperledger Fabric. And in Hyperledger Fabric, we cover use cases about how do we build Hyperledger Fabric network, a consortium network. How do we deploy smart contracts or chain codes using Go language? Then how do we build user interfaces using JavaScript or HTML, which connects to the blockchain platform? So, and we also at the end we also discuss different use cases in the industry. So that's a structure about the course. There are few pre-requirements, prerequisites that you need to know a little bit coding of JavaScript, Node.js. If you're good on programming, I mean at least basic programming on JavaScript, that would really be helpful. A question from Ramchi: when blockchain is used for financial transactions in a private blockchain, is there any limit to the number of blocks? There's no limit even in the private blockchain. One last question I'm going to take, and that's a good question from Tarun. How blockchain is different from normal distributed architecture? So the key point in the blockchain brings to us is basically the shared ledger. The ledger is shared. There is a consensus among every participants in the network about the transaction finality. Once the transaction is finalized, transaction becomes immutable. The ledger becomes immutable. And that's unlike the traditional databases. Even in the distributed architectures that we use today, the databases that we use, they are all mutable. Anyone who has access to the database can always go back and make changes to the transaction. But that's not true with blockchain databases. They're highly secured using state-of-the-art cryptography, and they're immutable. Once you make a transaction, it goes into a block. No one can change the block transactions. So tampering is not possible. Currently, how many organizations are using blockchain technology? It's a question from Vijay Lakshmi. A lot of new organizations starting from IBM has already recently built a POC with MERS as a supply chain and logistic company. That's the biggest company. They're building the supply chain on blockchain, and many organizations are trying to build non-financial organizations are trying to build proof of concepts pilots using blockchain. Okay, friends, thanks a lot. There are a lot of questions, and we'll take that offline as well. So thanks a lot for joining this session and listening to me. It was really fun time. Thanks a lot, and talk to you. Bye-bye. Okay, by the way, I'm going to share a link which you can use to join the course. And using this link, you can avail around 20% discount on the blockchain course. So let me share this link with everyone using the chat window. Thank you.